Hello and welcome to ADHD Support Talk Radio. The ADHD Support Talk Radio podcast is sponsored by addclasses.com. Sign up now for a free webinar by going to www.addclasses.com. This is your co-host, Tara McGillicuddy, and today I am back to talk with Lynne Edris, my co-host, about remembering to remember. So Lynne, before we get started, can you let our podcast listeners know a bit about yourself for those who may not know about you yet?
Sure. My name again is Lynne Edris. I am a productivity and ADHD coach. So I help professionals from all over the world learn to take control of their time and their lives so that they have more time, more energy, and more bandwidth for the things that matter most to them. So you can learn more about me and what I do on my website. It's www.coachingadvantages.com.
Funny, I often forget to talk about who I am. And so my name's Tara McGillicuddy, which I already said. I'm an ADHD coach. I'm a woman with ADHD. I have a bunch of different ADHD resources. You can learn more about me and the products and services I offer by going to taramcgillicuddy.com. So Lynne and I, before we pressed record, we're talking about, what should we talk about today? And we were talking about remembering to remember, which since I sometimes don't remember to introduce and talk about myself, this definitely makes a great subject to talk about.
Absolutely. It's really a hallmark characteristic of ADHD. And I tell my clients all the time that it's really like nothing to be ashamed of or nothing to feel bad about if you need help remembering to remember. When I was going through coach training, Tara, like a million years ago or whatever, I was working with a coach, a mentor coach, helping me prepare for my final evaluation. And one of the things he told me was that during my sample coaching thing, your practicum, if I didn't address the remembering to remember issue with the client, then I wasn't going to pass my coach certification. Wow. So remembering to remember is a hallmark challenge, right? So accepting, like more than accepting, really, like kind of surrendering to the fact that your memory is not reliable is really important, because that's when you can find ways to help yourself and to kind of accommodate your memory.
Yeah, and I think that can be a hard one for a lot of us because we haven't accepted it yet, or we haven't realized it yet. And oh no, I can do it. I'll remember it. I don't need a tool. My memory's perfect. And maybe if it was perfect 5 years ago, it may not be now. And
right.
Maybe we weren't realistic, or we didn't have the same amount of things, the same type of things to remember that were on our plate at a certain time. And when you have different things added and life comes at you, your memory can be impacted. So realizing that, or even if it's not quite a problem yet, it might be at another time. So let's just be realistic that if you have ADHD, the ADHD type brain wiring, that working memory probably will be a huge issue for us at some point if it isn't already.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I hear from clients is they'll say things like, well, I didn't used to have a problem with memory. Mm-hmm. Well, when you're younger, life is significantly much less complex, right? So you have much less to remember. You have far fewer complex things to remember and keep track of. So you just have more balls in the air, and more balls in the air in different places and in different directions. And even the least ADHD people among us need help remembering with the volume of information and stuff that comes at us and that we're responsible for. I always talk about my husband as being like the least ADD guy on the planet. And I just realized, like in the last, year or something, he has this alarm that goes off. I'm trying to remember if it's like Friday afternoon. He has the same alarm that goes off on his phone, or if maybe it's Monday morning. It's an alarm to remind him to set his alarms for the week. So he goes through his calendar, and every like web meeting or commitment, phone call, whatever that he has scheduled that's like in the middle of his like regular workday, he puts an alarm on his phone just a few minutes before that thing happens. So he's great. I mean, he does not have a drop of ADHD in him, super organized, super punctual and all of that. But he knows that when he gets caught up in his work or whatever it is he's doing, it's easy to let those things sneak up on you. I thought that was interesting because I have a lot of clients who will resist those kinds of things, right? They don't want to need them.
Yeah. But then they'll say, oh my gosh, I almost forgot about my appointment. I'm glad I had that 5-minute reminder. I'm glad I had that 15-minute reminder. And sometimes it's because we're so enthralled in something else that's more interesting or that takes our time and our energy. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't mean, you have early Alzheimer's or dementia or anything like that, which I think people don't want to, that's like a thing that they think of, oh, if I'm not remembering, it's because something's wrong. No, often it might just be because your mind's elsewhere. You're focusing on other things. So having that reminder, that bell, that whistle, that whatever it is to bring you back and realize, oh, it's 5 minutes until I was going to do something else, bring you back to that place where you remember to go to your appointment or whatever it is.
Absolutely. So one of the things I hear a lot from clients, my private clients will say, I had that alarm on my phone, or I had the calendar reminder, and the default for most electronic calendars is like a 15-minute reminder. You can change that, but then they'll say, in that 15 minutes, I was waiting to call you, Lynne. X came up, or I started Y, or I, this or that or the other thing. And I always say, it's okay. Think about the really maybe millions of things that can pass through your attention. Your things that you notice, things that you think about, things that you see, things that you feel in the span of 15 minutes. It's no wonder we forget. So then I talk to them about remembering to remember. What do you need to do to remember at the right time as well? So do you need a second reminder or something that comes up, or a second calendar appointment? Or if you have the capability, a second alert on your calendar appointment that is 2 or 3 minutes before our call, thinking about how can you remember to remember. It's not that there's something wrong with you. That's just life, right?
Yeah.
It's life, and it's especially life with ADHD.
Oh, it definitely is. And what you're going to notice once you start with the remembering to remember, you're going to feel so much better about yourself. You're going to you're not going to disappoint yourself. You're not going to disappoint whatever is involved in the thing you didn't remember. So taking that step to try it out, just say, okay, maybe my memory is great, but what's the worst that can happen if I set an extra reminder?
Right. Even if you don't think you have challenges with your memory on a regular basis, there are interruptions in life. And one of the things that is really typical for a lot of us with ADHD is our memory might be great in some ways and at some times, but it's inconsistent and unreliable. So I always say it's wonky. And it's that kind of wonkiness, or that lack of consistency, that makes it so hard, because you trust it. And even if most of the time it doesn't let you down, if it's unreliable, eventually you probably should stop trusting it and start relying on other things as well. So for some of my clients, it's not as common or not as frequent a problem, but having those safety nets in place for yourself so that you can relax and you can know that your tools and your systems and your processes are supporting you also takes a lot of stress off of your brain and takes a lot of worry away as well.
And stress is a huge factor in memory
Absolutely.
issues. When you're under stress, whether it's physical stress, emotional stress, being sick, having a death in the family, that type of thing, your executive functions get a hit. And memory, working memory, regular memory is a huge one. So if you're getting stressed out because you missed appointments and you haven't fully figured out or come to the conclusion or admitted you're not ready to get the timer to do things to help you remember, it's going to make it worse. So that's something to also pay attention to when you have a major life change in your life. that, okay, maybe it's time to also reevaluate your systems to help you remember things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it starts with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the other things I hear a lot about, and you probably do as well, Tara, is like alarm fatigue, right? So over time, if you use the exact same, I always talk about prompts and cues and, reminders. It doesn't always have to be an electronic alarm or an electronic reminder, but if you use the same thing over and over and over for an extended period of time, eventually it will become like wallpaper and you will stop noticing it. And that doesn't mean that the concept doesn't work for you. It just means you need to shake it up a little bit. So you think about like, what's we always call them micro changes. Like, what's a micro change you can make? Can you make a different sound to that alarm? Can you add some text that might look a little bit different to the reminder? Can you change the color of the note that you left for yourself? Can you change the positioning of it? Even like the shape of the thing, like say a Post-it or sticky note that you're using, the shape of it, where you put it, and if you move it by just a few inches, sometimes different shapes, different colors, different orientations, those kinds of things can be enough to make it, catch your attention again.
Yeah, and those small changes, because when you use the same thing over and over again, the same alarm, the same color, the same whatever it is, it becomes like background noise to a lot of us. You call it wallpaper, with like the alarms that you hear, it becomes background noise, and you sleep through it, or you just, so just changing the ringtone or whatever it's called, colors, it's just shape, a different pen, a different Post-it note. And I think you have to, for each person, it might be different when you change it, but just realizing it that you change. I mean, maybe you have like Monday and Tuesday is one thing. It's different for each person, or maybe it's just every 2 weeks. So that's the thing. Like, people might be like, okay, well, when's the ideal time? When's the perfect time to change it? And I think it differs from person to person.
It absolutely will differ from person to person. So paying attention to, when you're starting to ignore it, when you notice that you're starting to ignore it, that's when you need to change it. If you need some sort of prompt to check in with yourself to see if you're still paying attention to a particular reminder, prompt, cue, alarm, like that's important. But I think what is really kind of foundational is that you expect right out of the gate, up front, in advance, you anticipate that you're going to need to shake things up from time to time. Again, that doesn't mean that alarms and timers and reminders and sticky notes don't work for you. It means that eventually you need to shake them up.
Yep. And sometimes, depending on what the thing is, maybe you have another person call and remind you or talk it through with you. That changes your brain chemistry when you have somebody else on the other side, whether it's a coach, an accountability, a partner, or even like, your friend or mother or something, but just having that other person, whether they're reminding you, hey, make sure you get to such and such place and time, or maybe they're just like asking you a question and prompting you to think differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's something that most of us need to pay more attention to.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I, think my memory's great. And then I'm like noticing things differently. Like, I'm watching a movie and I'm like, I don't remember this at all, but I know I've seen it. Or wait a minute, I said, what? Is it that I didn't remember, or it just never became a memory to begin with because my mind was elsewhere? And then I was doing one of my action groups the other day, and I think there were 15 minutes left. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do some dishes. And I'm the one that's in charge of it. I'm the one that comes back and reminds people, hey, it's almost time to do your check-in. And it was like, I mean, I made it right on time, but I'm like, oh, I need a second alarm. I'm the one acting as the alarm. So here's the thing, like, all right, so now what I've realized is, if I'm getting up from my computer when I'm doing this and doing something else, I need something to bring me back and to bring my, mind and my energy and everything back to the real world and focus on, okay, let's remember that I need to do this right now.
Absolutely. I mean, time, our perception of how time passes and our awareness of how time is passing is not like particularly linear when you have ADHD, right? It's all relative to how interesting something is or what you're paying attention to. I mean, there are lots of different things that impact how you perceive the passage of time.
Yes.
So it's really easy to get focused on something or get sucked into something and have time pass much more quickly than you expect it to. So it's, you know, in that case, it's a combination of memory and a combination of the awareness of the passage of time and what time it really is. So again, there's no shame in needing those extra supports. And actually, if you can like kind of internalize and surrender to the fact that you need those extra support, you're going to have less shame around it overall.
Yeah, that they're more than likely, even if you don't need them, they'll still help you. So even if you don't fully accept
safety nets,
if the word need doesn't, you know, suit you, it's going to help you. And it's going to relieve stress. And, you know, what's the worst that happens if you have an extra alarm set or somebody reminding you that it's time to do whatever? Or, you know, and I'm one of these people that resist stuff like that. I'm getting better as I get older and all that, but it can be hard. It can be challenging to not resist it. But once you realize, oh, these things are here and they help me, my life's better. I'm happier. I'm less stressed. I have more peace in my life over this simple thing of just realizing there are tools that can help me remember, and I'm going to use them.
Absolutely. And they help you show up as the person you really are deep down in the way that you intend more easily. And, you know, how can that be a bad thing? And most of us can use more than that.
And we talked a bit about some of the tools like reminders, systems. Some people, it's just as simple as writing it down and looking at your notebook, assuming you remember to look at your notebook. But I think each person's different. The tools that work for you might not work for me.
Absolutely.
And the tools that work for certain types of things may not work as well for other types of things to remember. So even though we all want that quick, instant fix, we want to be told what to do, a lot of it is a trial and error, but just starting with the fact that, okay, I'm going to put some tools in there to help me remember. So my life's going to be better.
Absolutely. And it's got to be intentional trial and error, not just throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? Paying attention to what works and why. I think that's important.
Okay. So Lynne, do you have anything else you'd like to share with with the listeners about remembering to remember?
The one thing I just thought of that I think is important to keep in mind is when you're thinking about how you're going to remember, think about the I always call it the point of performance. So in terms of where are you going to be, where are you likely to be when you need to be reminded to remember, right? So a sticky note on your kitchen counter isn't going to help you much if you need to be reminded in your office in front of your computer. So really thinking about context and like point of performance is a really important piece. And that can, you know, go a long way into that whole, you know, kind of intentional trial and error and analytics so that you can see, okay, this reminder didn't support me this time because, you know, why didn't the reminder support you this time? Because my phone was on do not disturb, or because, you know, the thing that I used to remind me was, you know, in a different location or whatever. So really thinking about those kinds of things as you're analyzing can be really helpful.
Yeah, and be practical. I have a friend, a colleague that years ago told me he used to put a stick-it note in front of his toilet. So when he got up to go to the bathroom in the morning, he saw that, and for him it worked great. Me, it might not work because like I'm not first thing in the morning, I haven't fully woken up and I probably wouldn't read the post-it note. But for some people, something like that, like practical solutions, like if you're someone that you pay attention in the bathroom, put it on the bathroom wall. If you're at your computer all the time, maybe have it be right on your computer screen. So, you know, be practical and like your location and, you know, what you're moving towards.
Absolutely. Good stuff to pay attention to.
Okay. Well, Lynne, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this important concept of remembering to remember. And before we get going, can you give out your contact information once again?
Sure. My name again is Lynne Edris. You can learn more about me and contact me through my website. It's www.coachingadvantages.com.
And I am Tara McGillicuddy. You can learn more about me at my website, taramcgillicuddy.com. Also, be sure to stop by ADHD Support Talk Radio or ADHDSupportTalk.com, where you can listen to past episodes. You can sign up for our Facebook group. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.